Hi there, and welcome to Inside the Wooniverse, a podcast brought to you from the corner of Fringe and Maine. I'm your host, Colette Baron-Reid, and with me today is one of my dearest friends, Denise Linn. Now, a little bit about Denise. She's been researching healing traditions and teaching around the world for more than 52 years. She's the author of 20 books in 29 languages. All 20 are bestsellers. She's an internationally respected healer, teacher, oracle deck creator, and world-acclaimed expert in feng shui and space clearing. Denise has been featured on Oprah, Lifetime, Discovery Channel, BBC TV, NBC, CBS, and NPR, and more. And she's also the founder of the International Institute of Soul Coaching Oracle Card Certification course. Welcome, Denise.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. But listen, before we dive in, I forgot to mention something. I also want to say that Denise is a registered citizen of the Cherokee Nation. You're really interesting, can I just say?
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And I would like to say, too, that I remember following you for many years and buying all your books before you and I got to know each other. And we actually talked on the phone for 10 solid years before we met in person. So this is a real treat for me. And I'm very excited to talk to you today. So I want to dive into your background a little bit. You are the most woo out there. I mean, literally, you used to do events in front of thousands and thousands of people doing past life regressions and all kinds of things. But your parents were scientists. Am I correct? Were they chemists? What was it like for you growing up?
Well, like most kids, you when you're young, you believe the way your parents believe. My mother's Cherokee, but she was also a scientist. And she was interested in the rights for her people, but not necessarily the spirituality. And so as a scientist, if you cannot prove it, it doesn't exist. So they were atheists. They said, you can't prove God. There is no God. It's a crutch. It's emotional. I'm like, okay. And so I wanted to be a scientist. My sister went on to become a marine biologist. My brother went on to become an astrophysicist. My other brother got computers. So everyone went into sciences. I wanted to get into science too. So I did not believe in anything that was not provable just because of my upbringing.
Wow, that is amazing. So when did your spiritual journey actually begin? I know you've got some great stories around this.
It started in an unusual way. When I was 17, we lived in the farming area of Ohio, and I had a little motorbike. I'd saved up my babysitting money to buy this motorbike, and I just loved it so much. It was August, and I'm on my motorbike, and I'm just taking this ride between the cornfields. And what I didn't know was I was being followed. And it was someone I didn't know. I hadn't done anything to this guy. And he comes up fast behind me, and then he turns his car into my motorbike on purpose, and he knocked me off my motorbike. And I could remember just sliding across the gravel like, why did this guy hit me? Because I hadn't done anything. And so I was laying in the gravel, and I'm looking up, and I can see his car, and he's turning around. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's coming back to help me, because he'd hit me pretty hard. I think, splintered my spleen at that point. I mean, he hit me really hard.
Wow.
And as I was watching him, he rolled alongside, and he rolled the window down, and then he pulled out a gun. And in those traumatic situations, everything goes really slow, or it seems to go slow. It's like It's slow motion. And I'm looking at the gun, and I can't figure out, why is he aiming a gun at me? And suddenly there was this loud explosion, and he shot me. And then I heard the sound. I was still conscious. I heard the sound of the car door open and close. And then I heard the sound of him walking in the gravel. And I heard the sound of a zipper going down. And I heard the sound of him cocking the gun again. And I turned to look up into his eyes. And this moment, it will live with me in such vividness forever. In that moment, I wasn't afraid of him. In that moment, I wasn't angry with him. In that moment, all I felt was compassion for him. Now, go figure.
Oh
The
my
guy hit me
God.
with his car, and he shot me. I'm sure I was in shock, but my experience was this infinite acceptance and even love for this guy. And I mean, he was a bad guy. He had killed a whole lot of women. I mean, he was a bad guy. But as he was aiming the gun at me, and I just was present with him. It was like being present with another human being. His arm was starting to shake, and I could feel this internal struggle. He really wanted to shoot me again, but he couldn't. And his arm dropped, and he turned around and he drove away.
Jesus.
But that moment of in the worst of situations, even if I was in shock, which I probably was, that to be able to find that place of compassion and acceptance and even love. I mean, I still don't understand it to this day. Someone cuts me off in traffic and I'm like, hey, you dude, I get a lot more emotional than I do with the guy who hit me and shot me. But I was found on the side of the road and taken to the emergency ward. And it was pretty serious. And when I was in surgery, evidently the doctor said I died. But I remember that moment. I remember leaving my body. I remember it was like everything got really dark, and I felt like I was inside this black tunnel. And then it was as if I burst out of the tunnel, and there was this light, and there was no pain. There was just amazing, beautiful light. And crazily, it didn't seem crazy to me at the time, I was the light. It's like I no longer had a body per se. I was light, and there was music, the most beautiful music. We have nothing compatible or comparable here. Maybe Ave Maria, but nothing. It was so beautiful. But I was the music, and I was light and music, and there was this sense of love. And it was like here, I love you, Colette, and you love me, but we're separate.
Right, I get it.
There was no separation. There was only love. There was no object and no giver and receiver. It was just love. There was nothing in the universe that was not love. And here's another crazy thing. Again, it didn't seem crazy at the time. Everybody was there. Everybody who had ever lived, everybody who was ever going to live was there. And amazingly, we were individual and yet we were one. And I can't figure that out now. I can't figure out it. Like in my mind, I'm thinking, well, we are all squeezed together, shoulder to shoulder. But it wasn't like that. It was like a sense of individual and oneness. And then there was another thing. I couldn't conceive of time. I tried to think of the past and it did not exist. And I tried to think of the future. It didn't exist. The only thing that existed was now, and love, and a universal light, and the sound. And I was home. I knew I'd been there before. I knew that place in the depth of my being. And it made my life up to that moment fade. It was like, it was an illusion, the same way you wake up and your dream fades and it was an illusion. That was real. I was home, and I was really so happy to be home.
Oh, what an incredible story. I'm riveted. Keep going.
I saw this big river. It was like golden light river, just so beautiful. And I could see across the river. It wasn't close, it was far, but I could see across the river. And I knew if I could cross that river and get to that shore, that I would never need to go back to my life, to my body. And so I walked into the water, and it was like this liquid golden light was parting on either side of me. And I was like happy. I'm going home. I'm going home. And then I felt like I got roped. Now, on my Cherokee side of the family, my family had horses and they were involved in the rodeo and they had cattle. So as a kid, I was used to my cousins roping me. They said, you be the cow, we'll be the cowboy. Like, okay. But now I know that was like my astral cord.
Yeah, whoa.
And I am getting pulled out of the river, and I'm frantic to get to the far shore. But there's this voice, and the voice says, it's not your time. There's some things you need to do. And despite how desperate I was to get to that far shore, I got yanked back into my body. And to the doctor's surprise, and my body was damaged. I mean, in addition to losing my spleen, I lost my kidney, I lost an adrenaline gland, I lost part of one lung. I lost part of my stomach. I have a hole through my spine where the bullet actually went through part of my spine. You can still see the hole on the MRIs. It's
What?
like there's a hole there.
Ah,
Yeah. What else? Eventually, a tube replaced my aorta, 6-inch tube replacing the aorta. Um, and part of my intestines were gone. I mean, I was told I would never have children. There was a lot of damage done. And they told my parents, we don't know how she lived because she actually died on the operating table, but she won't be around for long. And, but I was healing pretty quickly. And then they said, well, she will be handicapped for whatever amount of short life she has. But I kept getting better. And it's like, how can I say it? It's like inside of each of us is an ember, and I believe an ember that remembers that place
yeah.
and remembers where we came from, remembers who we are in our core and our essence. And my short amount of time on the other side, it was like what I say, the warm winds of heaven blew over that ember and it became a flame. And that flame activated that healing force that we all have. We all have that ability.
Mhm.
And so my body, I still don't have the kidney or the adrenal gland or the spleen. I don't have those things, but my body found a way to be strong and healthy despite that. And so the other thing that happened, how I got involved in spirituality was I began to see things that other people didn't see. I began to see lights around plants and flowers and I remember one time I got pushed in the wheelchair to the hospital lawn. And I'm hearing this kind of like a song, not like a zippity-doo-dah, not like that, but like a ah, like a humming chorus.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I looked down at the grass and I'm like, oh my God, that sound is coming from the grass. And I looked at the blades of grass, and every blade of grass had light around it and was singing. And then there was this little tree, little sapling tree in the hospital, this kind of sterile lawn. And as I listened, I could hear the sound of the sap coming up the tree and the sound of the sunshine on the leaves going down into the earth. And the light was so beautiful. Now, I tried to tell people about this, and I started hearing music, and they said, well, it's the drugs. I'm like, all
It's
right.
the drugs. No, I
but
get it. I know this.
but then
Yes.
I wasn't, after I got out of the hospital, I wasn't on drugs, and it continued. And I knew what I was sensing and seeing was real, and I wanted to find out more about that. And I heard that those in Native culture hear the song of the grasses. They sense and hear the sounds and the song of the trees, and they see the light, and they feel this connection between all things. I came back into a world where we're separate from each other.
Yeah.
But the other side, we weren't separate. And in Native cultures, they talk about this, that we are one. We are a part of a great weaving. So that event started me on a quest to understand more about what I was seeing and sensing, a quest to understand the true nature of life. And that quest took me around the world to Native cultures, it took me to a lot of places, but that was the beginning.
Just by the way, too, I wanted to just step back a bit because you did mention something that the guy who shot you had killed a lot of people. Were you
Yeah,
instrumental in describing him
yeah.
and then you found out that he was a serial killer? Is that what happened?
Yes, and it is a long story,
Yeah.
but yes, I was the one person that J. Edgar Hoover got involved. It was kind of a big case
Jed,
because I was the
wow.
only person who survived. And because it was such a big case, when he was on trial, these pro bono lawyers from New York came in. Like,
Hmm.
and here's this prosecutor in a farming town with a few thousand people, and this huge team of black suits and suitcases, and the only way they could get him off was to prove that that I deserved to be shot. Which and so in those days, if it was in the newspaper, it was true. So I was a class officer. I was a cheerleader. I was an A student. I was like, quote unquote, a good girl.
Right.
So in court, they said things that were actually lies. They said, um, she takes drugs. I'd never even smoked a cigarette. She
Hmm.
takes drugs. And they said I was a virgin. She goes to orgies. And then they said that I was a communist. Now,
A communist
a
on
communist,
top
yeah,
of it.
because in those days communism was really bad. So
Hmm.
this was it, and he got off.
He
And
got off?
because yeah, and he went and
Whoa.
killed other people. And the other thing that happened was I was rejected by the whole town. They said, "We were there for you when you were shot. We had cans out at the gas station to raise money to help your recuperation. And you're a communist going to sex orgies and taking drugs." Even if someone's going to
Yeah.
sex orgies, even if they're taking drugs, even if they're a communist, they do not need to be hit and shot. But
Right.
that
I
was the
get it.
strategy used,
Oh,
and he
geez.
got off. And so that's why I had to move, because I would walk down the street,
Now
my
it makes
best
sense.
and people would cross over to the other side. My best friends were not allowed to talk to me. I had nobody. I had
Oh,
nobody.
Denise, your compassion and care and kindness and love for people, to me, after having gone through all that, right? It's pretty amazing that you turned out this way. It's pretty amazing.
I had a very, very dysfunctional childhood. And I mean, yeah, on lots of levels. And pretty much I was on my own
Okay.
after you know, I ended up moving when everyone else went off to college. For a while I lived in a trailer on the side of a freeway and worked at a truck stop, and there I was with the visions and sensing and seeing in a farming town in Ohio, and nobody to talk to. And I was eating cat food because I wanted to earn money to, trust me, cat food, it's way overrated. Trying to earn money to go to college. It was a really rough time in my life, and it was so
Yeah.
rough after what I've been through, and the challenges from a dysfunctional childhood all came up. I had nobody to talk to. So I decided one night I was going to kill myself.
Hmm.
And it was November, and there'd been a snowfall, but it melted, so there was like little patches of dirty snow everywhere. So in the middle of the night, I left my trailer, and I had to walk through a park to get to the river, and the river was called the Maumee River, and there was a bridge in town. And as I walked through the park, there was how they have lights in the park, and there was
Hmm.
a bench, and on the bench there was a man sitting on the bench. Now, no young woman should ever go up to a guy sitting on the bench in the park in the middle of the night. But I figured, I'm going to be dead soon anyway. What can he possibly do to me that I'm not going to do to myself? So I went up to him and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "No, I'm not." And I sat down next to him and I said, "Well, what's going on?" And he started to tell me about his life. And then he said, "I'm on the way to the river to kill myself." It didn't occur to me that that was weird. I'm like, "Oh my God, so am I." And so we just started talking, and it was amazing. I felt so good. And he said, "Oh my God, you've made me feel so good. You know what? I'm not going to jump off that bridge." I said, "I'm not going to jump off the bridge either." High fives all around. And by that time, that snow that had looked so dirty and so cold and depressing, that the sun was coming up, and it made the snow look pink and glowing. I will never forget that. And I
Amazing.
walked back feeling so good. Now, years later, I realized that was not a chance encounter.
Hmm.
I know and believe in angels, and I had an angelic experience in the hospital when I was shot as well. Angels will come in a form that they can come invisibly, and I've had those, and I've certainly you've had those. They can come in a lot of ways, but this guy came in a form that I could relate to. A young man about my age, on his way to kill himself, like I was on my way to kill myself. He saved my life. And I know they're angels. I know that they are only a thought away. And that experience was another powerful shift. It was a pivotal
Hmm.
point in my journey. And
Wow.
I've
And
been.
that's amazing. So, and I believe in that as well, too, as you know. To me, what you're describing now is a series of spiritual awakenings. That's what it sounds like to me.
It is pretty
Hmm.
amazing. How did this happen? I don't know. I mean, when I was young, I want to shout out to my grandmother. When I was young, when my family was really going through a lot of tumultuous experiences, my younger brother and I got schlepped off across the country, a few thousand miles to my grandparents who I didn't know, and for a few years. And I believe that she saved my life.
Wow.
She was a mystic. She was a oracle card reader. She was a tarot card reader. She was an astrologer, and she talked to me about spirit. She talked to me about that this isn't the only realm. So so when I talk to people who've researched who survives childhood traumas, it's when
Uh-huh.
there is at least one person who believes in them. My
Right.
grandmother believed in me.
Oh,
And I think she made all the difference. So, grandmother, I thank you. I thank you so much.
so there was the thread that was there. So now let's take that thread, let's take that sparkly woo thread and weave it back into your story. And
Okay.
post, post trailer, post cat food, you then began your travels. You did go to university, is that correct, or college, or did you?
I never graduated. And
Yep.
I was so, uh, when I was in high school, after all of this happened, I was offered a full scholarship for being a Cherokee. But this is so dumb. I didn't think, because I wasn't raised on a reservation, and because my skin wasn't dark, I thought I didn't deserve it. My life would have been so different if I would have accepted that scholarship.
Wow.
So because I thought, well, I don't deserve it. My skin's not black enough. I didn't wasn't raised on a reservation. Well, now I've learned differently.
Yeah.
It's native is what's in your heart, not, and I am registered in the tribe. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I understand
it's
what you mean.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
that sense of unworthiness that there's
yeah,
others
I
that
thought
are more, yeah, I
right.
get it. I get it.
And boy, that would have made a difference. But I never graduated because I kept trying to work and go to school, and
Hmm.
it was just hard. But eventually, I ended up in Hawaii to visit my sister, and I had heard about something called Zen Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was searching, how can I find, I wanted to get back to that place. I knew there was a way to get to that place of oneness, that place of light
Hmm.
and joy. I wanted to get back there. And I'd heard that when you got enlightened in Buddhism, you became one with all light. You became one with all things. There was no past, present, and future. I thought, oh my God, that's exactly right. So I went to this Zen Buddhist monastery. And it turned out they would usually only have an opening for a woman like once every few years. They happened to have an opening for a woman that had just come up because mostly at that time Zen Buddhists were mostly men and
Mostly
that,
men. Hmm.
yeah. And so I moved into the Zen Buddhist monastery. I lived there 2.5 years, and also, visited the one in Japan it was Rinzai Zen. Again, that was amazing. I never got enlightened. I sat there, and sometimes we would sit there for 16 freaking hours staring at the wall. You're not allowed to visualize. You're not allowed to think. You're supposed to just stare at the freaking wall. But it sounds kind of crazy, but it was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was just, the big thing was if you were lucky, if you got a seat where there was a shadow of a leaf. And so during the day, when it was like one of these sessions, 16 hours, you
Uh-huh.
could watch the shadow slowly. And that was like, oh my God, the shadows are moving across. That was it. But so that was a valuable time in my life. It allowed a lot of healing to occur.
So from here, you started traveling. So what was the catalyst? Something was a catalyst behind your desire to travel the world and learn about healing with different cultures very specifically, because that's really where your point of, travel began, right?
There's a lot of reasons, but underneath everything was my desire to understand more about what I experienced on the other side during that near death experience.
Hmm.
And so every culture I went to, and I've spent a lot of time in various native cultures, even though they would have different traditions, different rituals and ceremonies, there was this connective belief of that we are all part of this same living universe. Everything has consciousness, everything is alive. When I would talk about the experiences I was had, it was nobody said, oh, that's weird or that's strange or that's residual from the drugs you had. Nobody said that. They were like, yeah. Duh.
Right.
I loved my time with the Zulu in Bophuthatswana. Um, I spent time with Credo Mutwa, who is the spiritual head of all Zulu. And he talked about the consciousness of the earth. And the reason why it came up is I think one of the things he talked about was prophecies.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that he's talking about this time now. He said, we
Yep.
are moving towards a huge evolution of the planet, a huge change. And as you know, we're in the middle of this huge change. And he said, you will know when the set point is when there are 40 countries have women leaders around the world. He said, when that occurs, that is the true beginning. Because he said, what we need now, what the planet needs now, is the feminine energy. He never had any formal education. He's wearing skins. We're in a hut with a dirt floor. I mean, the stars outside, there's the tribal fire. He's got bones. And yet he's talking about what's occurring now, this time of evolution. And he's talking about the living spirit within the earth. He also, as an aside, talked about aliens and UFOs. And and he said, "Oh, we always are in touch with the UFOs." And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yes, you were kidnapped when you were a kid." I said, "No, I wasn't. I would have remembered something like that." And he goes, "Yes, you were." And then he showed me the old Zulu art with the big
Mm-hmm.
eyes. He
Yep.
goes, "These are aliens." And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, we have always been in touch. We always have known." And so that was kind of amazing, him talking about, the idea of, and then I was with the Maoris. The Maoris in New Zealand, they actually adopted me. They gave me the title of Tohunga S, which is kind of an honorary title and lots of honorary gifts. But they talked about, I don't know why I'm talking about UFOs, because people will cancel my vote. They'll go, okay, I was with her until she talked about
No,
aliens. But
no. You go and this is my jam. Okay, so we're in the Wooniverse, Denise. If you want to talk about aliens, angels and aliens, and Credo Mutwa, and yeah. That no. We're gonna go to the aliens now. Let's do it.
To the Zulu, I'm no Gukini. They name you if they're going to share tribal secrets
Mm-hmm.
or tribal wisdom. I won't say secrets, tribal wisdom. They
Yes.
name you. When I was with the Maoris, I was Fetu Monama Otorengi. I could say that. So, but they talked about so many of the same things that the Zulus did, that Native Americans do, that the Aborigines do, the Native cultures. This living spirit within all things, and they also talked about the aliens. Oh yeah, they come to the house. I mean, like really?
The aliens
Oh
come to the
yeah.
house.
Yes, I said, "You're kidding me." "Oh, no, they float around." And it's hard because my Western mind thinks, "You're just making this up." And you
Right?
got an active imagination. But, I'd actually with my husband, we actually had a close encounter with a UFO, and except for that, like, it was kind of amazing. That was about 45 years ago. We were driving along the coast of California above San Francisco. It was late at night. My husband had been fishing. And as it was really late, we were getting back. We lived in San Francisco. And we were getting back. And as I looked out over the ocean, I was looking at the stars. There was one, it looked like a satellite, but it was acting really erratically. It would go straight and then it would make a 45-degree turn. And then it would come back and go straight, make a 45-degree turn. I thought, that is so weird. And I said, "David, you're going to think this is crazy," which he did. I said, "I think there's something up there that wants us to turn around." And he said, "I'm tired. I am ready to go home. I'm not turned around." But I got really insistent. I'm a double Aries, so we can get very insistent. So finally he turned around and it was on my side now. And it was going, and it was a 45-degree, but it was going inland. And I said, "It wants us to go inland." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Because he hadn't seen it yet, only me, because it was on my side, not the
Right.
driver's side. I said, "We have to turn here, turn here." And he's like getting so mad. So we're going there and I'm seeing it. It's getting closer. But David stopped. He goes, "I'm stopping. I'm not going any farther. That's it. We're done here." So he stopped the car and I flew open the door. I ran out in the field. I put my arms up and I said, "Welcome," like you do.
Like you
Because it
do.
was obviously,
It,
and it came down. It was absolutely silent. And when I tell this story, no one believes me. And they say, "Did David see it too?" Like I made it up. well, David definitely saw it too. And we agreed on, we saw the same thing. So it's coming down lower and lower and lower, and it's hovering over the trees. It's really close, and it's got little lights all around it. And I'm like, oh, welcome. And I can feel, it's like whatever it was, I felt like little tendrils were reaching inside of me, and I felt like they could hear my thoughts. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, please help me help people, help me help people, help me be of service. And I could feel that they heard that. And then I keep looking back at David, because David pulled out peanuts. He's leaning on the truck eating peanuts. And I am so mad, because this is a holy experience. You do not lean on the truck and eat peanuts during a holy experience. And then there was the sound of a plane. And you know how they have the red light and the
Mm-hmm.
green light? All the lights went out, and it put one red light and one green light. And then it just floated. It was so absolutely still. It made no noise, and it floated off. And then I said, David, it wants us to go down this road more. And he goes, we're not going. He gets in the truck and turns around, and I am so mad, because I know whatever it was wants us to go down that road. We got in. I think that was the biggest fight we've had in our entire life. It was awful. But here's kind of the magic. The next morning, we had makeup sex, and because it
Okay.
was a really bad fight. And within an hour, I thought, I'm pregnant. And I
Wow.
had been told not only would I never get pregnant, that if I ever did get pregnant, I would have to abort it because it would kill me. That's what doctors told me. They said, it will kill you. Dude, you can never have children. But because we had this amazing experience, I thought, I'm meant to keep this baby. But I so much didn't want the negativity of someone in the medical community
Mm-hmm.
telling me that I couldn't have this child, that I didn't see a doctor, but I couldn't get a midwife because I was a medical risk. So I went 8.5 months without seeing a midwife, without seeing
Wow.
anybody. And I said, David, it can't be that hard. I'll push, you pull. People have been doing this forever, which was so stupid.
Oh my
Like, oh
God.
my God. But someone pulled me inside and said, Denise, I know you can do that, but that's not very nice for David to put him through that. I never thought of him, not once. So, so at 8.5 months, we got a hippie doctor 5 hours away. And now I have a beautiful daughter, and she has two beautiful children.
Yep.
And it was because of the flying saucer, that the Zulus and the Maoris and other native cultures talked about aliens. So I'm
Wow.
just
I'm mesmerized by your story. This is just fantastic. Okay. So we've talked about the commonalities that you have discovered in your travels, and how you got pregnant. This is just incredible. And so you have so many amazing methods. Let's just go on into some of your books, because you have such a huge body of work. Now, your first book was groundbreaking. Let's talk about that.
let me take a step back. I don't like writing. I don't think I'm particularly good at it. I'm dyslexic and have ADHD. But a publisher came and asked me to write a book. And he wanted me to write a book about dreams. And I wasn't particularly a dream expert, but he just thought it would do well. So it wasn't nothing to do about my expertise. It was a book that he thought would do well. And this was, I don't know, 45 years ago. It was a long time ago. And so, but crazily, I said, I think about it. And I thought, well, it's a book on dreams. How about if I watch my dreams, and I'll see if I get any messages in my dreams about writing this book. So we had a little cabin up in the mountains up in Washington State, and in the middle of the night, I had a dream. I've never had a dream like that before or since in my life. And in the dream, I was floating above the houses, and I could see down through the roof into the house. And there were two children. There was a little boy and then a younger little girl. And they were looking up through the ceiling at me floating. And as I got farther away and looked down, farther, I get those mixed up. As I looked at the whole planet, it was like the planet was on fire. There was fire everywhere, and there
Wow.
was so much heat. Now, mind you, this was like 45 years ago. It was so much heat. And the children looked up and they said, you have to help. We need help. The world is on fire. And it was, so in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh my God. I was crying. I was sobbing. So I didn't want to wake David up, and it was a tiny little cabin. So I grabbed a pen and I started writing and writing and writing all over this big cardboard box about my dream, about the world being on fire and the children asking for help. And then I went back to sleep and I kind of forgot about it, as you do. And in the morning, we're having coffee and David goes out and he comes back in and he says, Denise, I think a crazy person came in the night. I said, what are you talking about? He said, someone wrote all these messages all over the box. And there's this box with these crazy messages. Like some cult member or something. And he's bringing the box in. And I'm like, oh my God, that was my dream. So because of that dream, I know. Because of that dream, and it was so intense, I said yes to writing that book about dreams, which is, it's never got out of print.
It is one of my favorite books. That was the first book of yours that I got. I think it was in its 6th or 7th printing by the time it came into my hands, because I bought your book 30 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Here's what's amazing to me. My daughter has 2 children. She has an older boy and she has a younger girl. They were older in my dream, and I didn't even think about global warming that decades ago.
Sure.
It was not even in my consciousness. I didn't even know it was global warming. I just knew that the children were saying the world is on fire. Right. The world is so hot. And so I don't think my books have made a difference in global warming. I don't see any connection there, but I think it's an interesting coincidence that because of that dream, I wrote my first book. And then another publisher said, will you write for us? And then it just continued from there.
The rest was history. I mean, you've written a lot of amazing books. Now, you have a lot of amazing methods in your books. And can you share some with our listeners? Like, for example, how to become invisible and how to find your true name, or the power of blankets and shape-shifting. I mean, you have so many cool things. Let's go through them. How do I become invisible?
There's a little story to go along with this, who I learned it from. I learned it from a mystic. I told you that I had a 6-inch tube replacing the aorta.
Yeah.
And one day I woke up and I felt really cold and I was having trouble breathing. And I looked on my arms and my legs. There were these long lines of bruises on my arms and legs. And those are blood clots going through the veins, and they're bruising them from the inside. And there were lots of them. And so evidently the tube had started to separate.
Wow.
And
how are you alive?
It's a miracle. It's a freaking miracle.
It is a miracle. Yes, go on.
So one of my students, I was teaching shiatsu, then one of my students was a doctor, and he came over and he said, Denise, this is really serious. You've got blood clots. That's why these long bruises. We got to get you to the hospital. I said, I really don't want to go. He goes, I'm going to go get my doctor bag or something. I'm going to be back and we're going to get you to the hospital. He said, I don't care. You could die. So while he got his doctor bag, there was a knock on the door. Again, if someone told me this, I wouldn't believe this. This guy walks in. We don't know him. He just shows up and he walks into the bedroom and he goes, you're not going to die. I went, okay. He goes, you may have to go to the hospital. I said, I don't want to go to the hospital. He said, well, I'll see what I can do. He goes, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to send you some energy. So he left. And all of a sudden, because I was so cold, felt like I was turning blue and I couldn't see so well. Mm-hmm. I could breathe. I was warm. Everything was shifting. His name is Jack Mantos, if anyone ever knows him, San Francisco. I love Jack Mantos. Anyway, so Jack came back and he goes, Denise, your vitals have changed so much. He goes, I'd like you to go to the hospital, but I'm just going to keep monitoring you. I never had to go to the hospital. It took about 2 weeks to reabsorb all of those blood clots, but this guy was a mystic. He could do full body transfer. Like he could take his body from here to Iowa and back. He was amazing. So it was secret training. I trained with him for 4 years. David and I did. One of the things I learned from him was the art of invisibility. So this guy, he saved my life again.
Yes.
But well, here's what he said. And I have found it to be true for being invisible. He said, to be invisible doesn't mean that you're not there, but it means that nobody sees you. To do this, you need to project your energy to where you are going. And he said, find a dog that always lurches at you, you walk by the rah, 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 rah. And he said, as you're approaching, before the dog sees you, project your energy to like a tree 2 blocks down the road or something. and the dog will not see you. And I tried it. It worked. And it's if you don't, and have you ever heard people say, I just didn't see that car. I just didn't
Right.
see
I
him.
didn't see it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't see it. And it's often because whoever they didn't see, their energy is not there. It's projected forward. And it's an amazing technique. It's not like you're not there. It's just nobody would see you. You can go into a party and nobody will see you.
So do
But
you
the
teach this
instant
now to other people?
I have in my seminars,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Okay.
how to hyper time and but see, I don't think to me learning mystical secrets and mystical techniques is that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is how can I love myself more? How can I
Yep.
be more present with life? How can I be more open to the creator? To me, that's important. Learning how to work with time, and time is fun. You can stretch it.
Yep.
And there's a lot of mystical things. But I've met people that know mystical techniques, and I'm not too impressed if they don't have a big heart.
No, I
To me,
get
it's
it.
all
Yep.
about the depth of your heart, the depth of your love, and maybe even more important is the depth of your authenticity,
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that trumps like, oh, love. It's like being who you are in this moment. That's what's important to me.
Oh, that's so amazing. One of your best-selling books is called Sacred Space. You teach about sacred space and sanctuaries. How do you make a place sacred?
I first got into sacred space. I first got into feng shui, and I'd been interested in space clearing when I was teaching in Hong Kong, and I heard about this thing called feng shui, and they said if you move things around in your house, you can increase your income, you can get your boyfriend or husband. I mean, and I thought, really? And I began to, in my travels, with spending time with those in native cultures, and every culture has its own understanding of how the spaces we live in can impact our lives. For example,
Right.
in Brazil, they say you should never go into a space and be able to see out of it. You'll
Right.
lose energy, and that's something pretty much ubiquitous around the world. This understanding of how you occupy your space will make a difference in your life. And so I began to take the information I gained from various cultures around the world and utilize them in a space. And it could make a huge difference. It was like magic. Out of the information I gathered, I put together a book called Sacred Space and later Feng Shui for the Soul. But I've found a few things that make feng shui really easy so that anybody can use feng shui. And by creating your space in alignment with who you are, it can literally change your life. The first thing is if it feels good, it is good feng shui. If it feels bad, it's bad feng shui. You don't have to learn all these rules. You don't have to get out a compass and figure it out. You don't have to do all of the numbers on it. Some people are so much in their mind, they don't know. So sometimes you have to get really quiet
Mm-hmm.
and centered and even visualize yourself in that space. Notice, how does this feel? So that's the first thing. Also, there's three really important aspects of feng shui that I'm going to share with you, and these are very helpful. So you don't have to work out the right system. Three things. One is your entrance. What is your entrance like? Your entrance, it's the first thing you see when you go home. You should, when you step across that threshold and when you approach the door, you should feel excited. You're home. Your energy should go up. So you want what's called an auspicious front door. You don't want a bunch of stuff like a bunch of brushes and a bunch of
Clutter.
little baby trees. Yeah, foliage. You don't want foliage in front of it. You don't want it to be dirty. You want it. You don't want a peeling door. You don't want a squeaky door. You
Mm-hmm.
want a front door that feels what they call auspicious. Also, when you first walk in, what is the first thing you see? This is a metaphor for not just for your home, but for your life.
Oh boy.
Do you see something that feels uplifting? I remember this guy came to me and he goes, Denise, in my life, I came to you for feng shui because I just feel like I keep hitting brick walls in my life again and again. I said, well, let's see your home. Open the front door. And there was like a brick wall right there. Well, duh. What he's seeing every time he walks in is a brick wall. I said, put up a beautiful painting with a long view. So do you feel expansive, something that makes you feel good? In feng shui, it's not what is real, it's what is perceived. So even though there's
Right.
still the brick wall there. So have an auspicious front door. Also, if you can, when you are standing inside the house looking out, it should feel like it expands. Not everyone can have that, but that's ideal. And there's ways
Mm-hmm.
to create that. So that's number one. Number two is have a mountain at your back. What does this mean? A mountain at your back. This means that ideally you want some height in the back of your house. If you go into a restaurant, don't you usually choose the chair that has the wall behind you?
Hmm.
Because it feels safe, it feels
Right.
protected. And you usually like to be able to see the door. You don't like the door behind you, for example. So if you can, have tall trees behind you, have
Mm-hmm.
flagpoles, have a hill behind you. This is good feng shui. But some people are like, I live in a high rise. I can't do that. Well, you can put in feng shui, they'll do things like put a picture of a mountain at the back. Or if you have a
Interesting.
chair, have a high chair so that it's your symbolic mountain.
Mm.
So you have, I guess the two most important things are having a mountain at the back and an auspicious front door. And if it feels good, it's good
It's
feng
good
shui.
feng
If
shui.
it feels bad, it's bad feng shui. So remember those three things.
When I remove clutter, for example, like I check the
Mm,
story that it tells me. Like I had
yes,
shaming
yes.
clothes, that were like looking at me and yelling at me, "You're too fat," right? And I would like one day I will fit into that, and instead I just started pitching everything. If I didn't feel good looking at it, it had to go.
Yes, yes.
And even with kitchen utensils and things like that. But you did bring something up, which I'm going to talk to Mark about after this, which is we do not have an auspicious entrance. We have a lot of boxes in our entrance and clutter in there. So we are going to declutter it and change it up when we get home.
Okay, let me ask you about the entrance. Is there
Sure.
is there a hallway there, or is it just a bunch of boxes? If there's a
No,
little
no,
hallway,
there's a nice hallway actually, and the entrance looks out. You can see on the other side, by the way, there's a big window there, but we have like these beautiful plants. Like it's really
yeah,
pretty.
that's fine. But
Yeah.
when you open the door, can you see the hallway? Are there
Yes.
boxes in the hallway? Okay,
And the box
so
is on the
here
side of
when
the
you
hallway.
okay, so here, people who have that configuration, and this might not be you because everybody's different. Often they aren't able to get enough breath in. They can't.
That's
There's a
me.
sense There's a sense of constriction. So if you want to get more breath, you
Uh-huh.
want to get more flow in your life, get rid of those boxes or move them somewhere
Right.
else.
That is me. Shallow breathing.
Okay, well, this will allow your breathing to open. And especially with COVID right now, this is a really good time to make sure that that is expansive there.
Oh, wow. This is great. Oh my God.
Do not have boxes there.
Do not have
Anyway, go ahead.
boxes. And yes, I will make sure we declutter that entire entranceway. Now, you offer courses on transforming clutter and elemental space clearing.
I,
Why is clearing clutter so energetically important? Like we just talked about my boxes.
I look at clutter as modern day alchemy. In ancient times, we had ceremonies, we had rituals. Ever since the beginning of humankind, we have always had ceremonies for the simple reason they work. Now, in our modern day, we are bereft of ceremonies and
Yes.
rituals. And the reason why they work is you are giving form to the formless. When, in no small way, we identify ourselves with our stuff.
Right.
Someone comes over, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't clear. It's not who you are, but we identify with it. So if you have things that you identify with, shaming clothes, for example,
Yep.
that is a message to your subconscious mind to feel ashamed all the time. You're not consciously aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's screaming, it's whispering, it's saying that to you all the time. Your stuff, if you don't love it and don't use it, it's clutter.
Right.
And and clutter isn't the same for everyone. If you want to shift your life, if you want to transform your life, if you want to heal an old pattern, I really encourage you. This is not just you, Colette, this is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Clear your clutter. And it doesn't have to
Yep.
be like some people say, I never can clear it all. Literally, one small drawer can make a difference. 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
a day. If you have 5 minutes a day, you take 2 minutes to start clearing and 2 minutes to just put back everything. And that, if you do it with intention, it makes a difference. I got a quick story for you about
Yes. Love
clutter.
it.
I had clients, and um, one client called, and he said he was calling to say goodbye. And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I'm going to kill myself, but I wanted to thank you for the work that we've done together." And most people, I would think, okay, this is a cry for help. For him, I knew him. I knew he was going to kill himself. And I couldn't get there because of the distance that he lived. So I said, and I don't even know where these words come from. I said, tell me about your drawers. And he said, what? And I said, tell me about your drawers. What? And I said, tell me, where are you now? And he said, I said, okay, can you see a drawer? And he goes, yeah. I said, go over and open that drawer. And I said, what's it look like? It's a mess. I said, I am coming to your house. So by the time I get there, that drawer needs to be cleaned. I said, you can kill yourself, but when I get there, I need to have that drawer clear. Okay. I got to his house. He opened the door and he goes, what did you do? He goes, I feel so different. It was the symbolic act of, as he cleared out the mess in that drawer, it was symbolically beginning to clear the mess in his life. And as far as I know, he's still alive today. So it is powerful, and it works in almost mystical ways you can't even begin to understand, but it does work.
Oh, I know it works. It's amazing. And I love hearing you talk about that. Let's talk about past life regression now. I've actually been regressed by you in an audience with hundreds and hundreds of other people. And I know you are one of very few practitioners who have taken audiences of 3,000 and more through past life regressions. So let's talk about that. What are some of the common misconceptions about it? And tell me a little bit about how you got into past life regression and what it actually means.
I got into past life regressions through an experience I had when I was working as a healer. I was a really good healer. Sometimes I was booked up to a year in advance because I would just touch people and they'd feel better. The symptoms would go away. They said it was like magic. But every once in a while, someone would come back and say, you touched my shoulder and it was gone, and now it's been 6 months and it's back. And I thought, how can it be back? And I realized that a lot of the challenges that we have didn't originate here now. They originated in our earlier years, even our childhood. So for those few people that occurred for, I began to take them back into childhood. This was amazing because often they would find decisions that they made, the beliefs that they had adopted about who they were, what they deserved, that came from early childhood. And we'd rework it. It felt like reworking it at its source. And it would heal. There would be instant and profound healing. And I was working with a woman, and she'd come to me, and she was having some stomach challenges. And so I was taking her back to what I thought was her childhood. And she said, this is while her eyes were closed in deep meditation. And she said, I'm being poisoned by my husband's enemies. And I'm like, what is she talking about? I knew she'd never been married. What is she talking about? And she continued to talk. And she said that her husband had political beliefs that she didn't believe in. But in that time, that as the woman, she had no power. And so he was out of the village for a while. So his enemies came and they forced her to take the poison, and the poison killed her. And it ate away, whatever kind of poison it was, it ate away at her stomach. And she had ulcers in this life. It was also came up at a time in her life when she felt powerless, as she felt in that life, being powerless to do anything. And she knew the decisions that her husband were making were going to be damaging to him and to her. So this was a wake-up call. It's like, oh my gosh. And then I found that by taking people back into these images, into these memories, these past life memories, that you could heal something at its original source, that sometimes our challenges don't start here in this life. Sometimes they started in other lives.
Right.
And sometimes they're absolutely real lives. I've had people do my past life regression. They go to the library, they do research, they find themselves, which always makes me look really good. But it's not about proving that they're real. It's about results. And sometimes there's things that I call soul dramas that maybe you can't prove. And most past lives you can't prove anyway, because there's no written history. But it's not so much about if this is historically accurate, but what results does it produce? And by going back, shifting the past, it's like if you imagine a mountain and there's a spring coming down the mountain, and as it comes down the mountain, it gathers debris and it gets down the mountain, it's got log jams. To change it, you could get in with heavy equipment to pull out those log jams. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. Or you could go to the top of the spring, move a tiny little stick, a leaf, and you can change the course of the river forever. So what past life regression does, it can change the course of the river forever. And it can change that fear, that phobia, whatever that challenge is, it's one way, and it's a quick way in many cases, that things can shift. I had a woman in South Africa who was blind, and she had a tumor that was pushing on the optic nerve. During the past life regression, her eyesight started to come back. And she went to her doctor, and the doctor said, well, we don't know what happened, but this won't last long. She wrote to me 3 years later, said, I still can see. And she was so glad because she had lost her independence because she couldn't drive. And once she got her eyesight back, she could drive. I've had people who couldn't walk in wheelchairs, and they say it's something magical about me. It is not. It is actually going to the source of where the challenge is and shifting it at the source, and it can make a huge difference.
I had an experience in one of your seminars.
Ooh, tell me.
This is like early on. When we just after we met in person, like this is going back to 2005, right? And I sat in your room, in one of the big rooms when Hay House had their conference. You had about 4,000 people in the room. And I had a really bad knot in my back that kept coming up around my shoulder. I have a rotator cuff injury, but it was really in a lot of pain. And I wasn't planning on seeing this at all because you took us all into the regression, and I thought I was going to think about something else, honestly. And all of a sudden, I imagined, it just came to my memory that I had a sword stuck there. And
that will do it.
I had a sword, and I turned around to look, and it was somebody that I knew that was just in my life that I hadn't seen in a long time. That was somebody that I had a very destructive relationship with in my 20s. And bingo, that person was actually a man, but I knew it was the same person who was a female in this life.
Right.
And I forgave them, and they pulled the sword out. It was just,
wow.
You know what? I haven't thought about this in years until you started talking about these other people. And it was profound. I remember sitting there and I thought I made it up. Because even though, like you and I are both skeptical people, even though we have the most wildest experiences, we're like, I'm not really sure. Was that real? But I had felt that, and then there was no more pain. And it used to be chronic in this one part of my back.
I love those kind of stories.
Yeah.
And when people get skeptical about that you can actually shift things, I remind them about split personalities. And it's interesting because a lot of this comes from, a lot of our challenges in life come from our identity, who we believe we are. But in a split personality, you can have two different identities. And people say, well, it's psychological. But here's something interesting. And I've talked to people like in the medical field who've worked with it. One personality can be diabetic and the other personality isn't. One personality can be highly allergic to something and the other personality isn't, because there's two different identities in the same body. So it's not necessarily the body that you're in that dictates the challenges you have. I would suggest it's your identity, and your identity comes from beliefs and patterns that you have taken on in the past and sometimes in the far past. So I love the fact you haven't had pain since.
That's amazing. That. So are you working on anything new right now?
I am working on something. It's going to sound kind of crazy. I'm working on a new Oracle deck called the Time Traveler deck, and it's about time traveling. Everyone. But the thing that I'm most excited about, and I feel like it's a book that is the book I've been meant to write my whole life, and it's about the gift of low self-esteem. But the reason I'm so excited about it is I suffered from low self-esteem as a kid. People could say it was my family dynamics and, kind of a mentally ill mom. But I worked so hard through a lifetime of courses I took, and so much therapy, and I never was able to gain self-esteem. And so finally I thought, you know what? It's been decades and decades, and I still have all these feelings of a lack of self-esteem. So there's got to be some gifts in it. There's got to be something great about it. And the more I look, it is really cool. There is so much to gain by having low self-esteem. And I thought, there's other people out there. They've tried everything, and then they judge themselves. It's a double bummer. You have low self-esteem, and then you judge yourself for having low self-esteem. So I am really excited. I didn't know. I thought, if nobody takes this book, I'm going to self-publish it, because there's got to be people like me who've worked, so hard to have high self-esteem, and they just don't have it. So look at what's great. And there's so much that's great that even if someone said, I'm going to give you high self-esteem, I might say, wait a minute. I'm
Right.
not so sure there.
This is so interesting. I
So
love this.
that's my newest book.
That sounds really interesting. Denise, I'm going to pull a card now, with your permission, from Wisdom of the Oracle to see what the universe has to tell us about our conversation. And
Oh
right? And
boy,
let's see
okay.
if there's anything else that we might have learned, or what the universe wants to talk about. And it's breathe. And it's
Interesting.
breathe.
Okay, I think breathe is interesting given the hallways and
Right?
stuff.
Given the always,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, the card breathe was in the protection position. And I'll tell you what it means. So when this card is in protection, it talks about the lack of trust that we might have. And I think this is for our listeners, right? That we don't always trust these extraordinary experiences that we have, and we don't trust the ordinary either, right? That there's a sense that we have to control things, or that we have to be on patrol all the time to check perceived threats, etc. And when it's in this position, it reminds us that we need to slow down and take a deep breath. And it's about trust. It's about trusting the relationship that we have between each other, the relationship that we have with all of life, and of course with our higher power.
I
Want to
love
add?
that.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add because to me, that perhaps is the essence of happiness.
Yeah.
It's just trusting.
Yeah.
They say that love is the opposite of fear. I'm going to suggest that trust is the opposite of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Trusting that you are where you need to be, trusting that everything is working for your highest good, trusting that who you are is enough exactly as you are. I love that.
And including with the low self-esteem, right? It's about radical acceptance, really, and that we can
Yeah.
breathe easier when we're not fighting against or
What
resisting what
is?
is, right?
Right.
Yeah, I love that. So I've got a couple last questions for you. What do you see for us as we move into an uncertain future? What do you personally wonder about? What kind of solutions do you wonder about?
I think we have been in a huge, well, let me take a step back. In Native cultures, they talk about the understanding of the cycles of life, the cycles of nature. And we have winter, spring, summer, and fall. In our technological modern day world, we have only summer. We have
Right.
only go, 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 go. And we have no winter. And the winter is important, it's valuable. So these last couple of years with the pandemic have been our global winter. And the global winter of stop, breathe, assess what's going on here. And then in springtime, that's when the ice breaks. It's a time of the new seeds are breaking through the soil. Well, there's a breaking up of old structures, the breaking up of old patterns. And as we move into the spring collectively, the spring is the time of new growth, new energy. And I'm going to suggest that for each individual, as well as for our planet, there is a new energy emerging. We just need to be ready for it. And to be ready, clear out anything that doesn't serve you, clear out relationships that don't support you, clear out things that you do with your time that are not empowering. Use this time well and use it to clear out the old so that you can receive the new energy coming forward.
Oh, I love that. So, for the highest good of all, how could we bring more love to the world?
For the highest good of all, love yourself.
Yeah.
Exactly the way you are, because we are connected. We are so connected. When you love yourself, that radiates out from you in all directions, and it touches people that you may never even meet. You may never even know, but you share a similar frequency. If you want to heal the world, heal yourself. If you want to bring love into the world, love yourself. Exactly as you are.
Denise, that was so fantastic. Thank you so much. Everyone, for more information about Denise and all the courses she offers, her oracle card decks, and all her books, you can check her out online at deniselinn.com. Amazing. Thank you. And it's so wonderful to connect with you today, Denise.
Thank you so much. This was a joy.